Hello and welcome to part 2 of this tutorial where of course we're making a sci-fi vehicle within Blender. Of course, the first tutorial covered how we made the body of the car, and so the second part obviously is going to be making everything else that you see here, and by the end of these next few videos you're going to be able to create this entire car from scratch within Blender. So first off, in part 2 we're going to be creating the axles, which is going to be in this video, and we're also going to be creating the tires within this video, and both of those two things will be created in one video. And then the video after that, kind of part 2.5 if you would like to say that, is going to be where we're going to be creating the lights in the front. We're going to be creating some seats like you can see in here for the inside of our sci-fi vehicle, and we're also going to start adding some basic materials into our model, but we're really just going to do that for the glass and for the lights currently. And I'll be releasing another tutorial probably sometime tomorrow, where I'm just going to go into how to do all the materials for this vehicle, so stay tuned for that. But for right now, let's go learn how to make some tires and some axles. Of course, this is what we accomplished in the first part of the tutorial here. If you want to watch that, you of course can go back to the channel and watch that. But today we are going to be working on essentially everything on the bottom here, and we might even get into some texturing, making this thing look like an actual vehicle. So we'll see how far we go here. So to get started, how about you're going to want to go to add, mesh, and then cylinder for this, as we're going to be starting the axles first. And it doesn't matter where you spawn this in. I mean, you can pretty much move it with G like we kind of did in the first tutorial, GY or GX or GZ, and all those shortcuts of course are on the side of the screen there. So what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to try to just get this kind of lined up here right in the middle. We're just going to want to move it with G. And then we're going to try to rotate it on the x-axis, so then we can actually make an axle for our wheels, or at least one of the axles. So we're going to press R, X, and then 90. So that is looking better. So we're going to bring this down here now, and it really kind of depends on what size you want, of course, based on how you're trying to make this sci-fi vehicle and how that's kind of going for you. You can kind of make the kind of creative decisions that you want. Right now I'm just scaling it, so S to scale. Just trying to get some of the proportions right on this thing. And I believe on my original vehicle I did have 3 axles, so we're gonna just make one axle first, and then we can just kind of duplicate that all the way down. So I think this is about the rough size that I kind of want this to be at. I might of course just extend it out a little bit more on the Y by doing scale, or S and then Y. But otherwise that's looking pretty good so far. So now I'm going to go into edit mode, so we're going to press tab, just like in part 1. And what we're going to do here is we're going to press Control R. Okay, so this allows you to make a little bit of a line, similar to what we did in part 1, again with the panels on the top, but pretty similar. So we're going to just press escape once we do that. And so that splits our axle in half, and if we actually go to the face tab, and if we press Alt and then click, at least on Windows, if we press Alt and then the mouse key, it actually selects all the faces around it, and you can just do a Shift and then select this one too with your mouse, and then you can just delete all of these. And that gets you half an axle. Now you may be wondering what exactly the point of that was, and really the main point of this was just to mirror it over, kind of like what we did with the main body of the car in part 1. So we're going to go to add modifier, we're going to go to mirror modifier, and since this is on the Z axis, we're going to do that. We're going to press clipping because we want these two parts to stay together, but we're not going to like apply that yet, so don't do that yet. We're actually going to keep kind of working on this axle here. So it kind of depends on what kind of shapes you want to make and how you want to go from here. But for me anyway, I'm going to do a Control R again. I'm going to just try to estimate where I kind of want this little like dip in the axle to be, and where it's connected. So I'm going to just switch to face selection now. I'm going to do Alt click, just like I just did. We're going to press E and then S. We're going to see what that does. Oh, that's looking nice. That's looking good. So I'm gonna do that, and you can kind of just like play around with like how you want it to look. I don't like I want to look like that, but yeah, you can kind of do whatever you want with it. Like I kind of like this like bevel over here, kind of. So I'm gonna keep it like that, I think, and that's looking good for that purpose. So now the next thing I want to do is kind of just start to add detail, right? And we can do that in a variety of different ways. We can kind of do it like we did with the panels, where we just like go face by face and do E and then scale with our S key and then just extrude it out a little bit, you know. And you can also see that it's kind of applying on the other side, and we can do that if you want. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control Z what I just did, and what I want to do is kind of have some like little tiny lines that really look good when it finally gets rendered. So I just did a Control R and just moved it so that you create these like tiny little lines here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Alt and then select on both, and then I'm going to do Shift, Alt, and select, just like that. And then I'm going to press E and S, and this is going to create a nice little indent there that I kind of like. So it's looking good, I think. And now I'm not really sure where I want the wheels exactly, but I know that this thing is gonna have to be shrunk a little bit, so I'm gonna just do a Control R once again like I just did, and we're gonna press S to scale, and we're just gonna scale this down just a hair here. And then of course this is gonna be where our wheel right over here is where our wheel's actually gonna be attaching, but that's gonna come when we actually make our wheel. So right now, though, this is looking pretty good, I think. Looking at it now, I might want to almost scale this down a little bit again, but it kind of just depends on where we want the wheels. But I think the wheels are going to be somewhere around here. So I think the best bet would be to do S and then Y, just to get kind of the scaling right. Or actually, even better, I might just retcon what I just did and just move this back here. There we go. And scale this up. Yeah, I think I might have liked that better than what I was doing. So here, we're gonna just keep it like that for now. Yeah, that looks good. So once this part is done, we can actually just Control C and V this a bunch of times. So actually, I would even, if you want, yeah. So the best way to do this would probably be to do Shift and then D, which of course creates a duplicate. So I'm gonna press escape here, and I'm just gonna move this on the X-axis. Right there, that's looking good. I'm gonna do that again, Shift D, G, and then on the X-axis again. All right, that's looking nice actually. All right, I don't mind that. So that's kind of where our axles are gonna kind of come into play here, and then of course we'll be adding our wheels to kind of compensate for all this. But I know on my original model, I did have a few things in the front too. So how about we kind of start to add that detail as well. So I knew that the axles were connected to this base area right here. So how about we try to do that right now. So you can kind of just try to look underneath the car and try to see where you want to keep these connection points. But whenever you do figure out where you want to have these connection points, I would suggest doing a Control R just like we've been doing, and just try to line it up with where you want this to be, you know, where you want to connect the axle. Oh, wrong thing. Where you want to connect the axle here. So right now I want to connect my axle, like I think I want to start from right here maybe. And if you're a little bit confused about what I'm saying, like with connect your axle or whatever, you'll see that in a second. So here, I've just done a Control R on both sides. So if we just select this bottom face here and just extrude this out, you can see how that kind of starts to work out a little bit better. And you can kind of make decisions. If you want to angle it, you can go ahead. If you want to make this one a little bit thicker, you can go ahead and do that. So you guys have a lot of creative freedom on what you want to do with this. So this is just kind of like a starting point for you to do whatever you really want to with this vehicle here. So that's the beginning part of that. So we're gonna just repeat that same step. And over here, actually, just with the panel lines, we actually have these two faces kind of already cut out for us to use. So that's what I'm gonna use for this one. I'm just gonna extrude downwards on Z, just like we've been doing. I might want to just scale this on the Y, so S and then Y, or sorry, not Y, on S, on X, sorry. So that would be that one. And then the final one would be back here. This one we are going to have to do a Control R though, because I didn't actually cut this one. So just going to do Control R twice, and we are just going to extrude this one outwards. And then obviously to the, oh, my bad. And then we were just going to G and then X those two faces. So that is looking okay so far. Yeah, so I mean, obviously this is going to improve as we go. So, yeah. So another thing that I knew I had in there was like this light thing in the front. So we can actually make that too. So if we want to select the top face here, we can extrude this out and downwards. And you can kind of choose what kind of angles you want on this like kind of light thing that I had in the front here. Just kind of like for lighting, I guess, for the Sci-Fi Vehicle to use. And really, this is just all like creativity at this point. You can really do whatever you want with this. And you don't have to follow this step. You can choose to. You don't have to. Like, it just, you know, you can do whatever you want with this. So I'm going to E and then S this. So then we just create, similar to our panels, once again, same concept. So then I'm going to extrude this backwards. And that is looking good, actually, yeah. You also, and you can kind of see how this is kind of jutting out. So what I would suggest you do is just G and then Z all the way up. So just move this little part all the way up. And then you can kind of scale this however you want. You can do whatever you want with that. And it's looking good. And heck, we can even add some panels here too, if we really want to. You know, add some detail to this thing and make it look nice. And once again, this like panel technique is just very similar to what we did with the body. So if you're if you just need a little refresher on that, I would suggest you just go back to part 1 and rewatch that part. So yeah. So right now, this is looking pretty nice, I have to say. So right now, this is looking really good. And of course, just take your time. If you haven't gotten to this point yet, pause the video. Go ahead and just like rewind, watch it as many times as you need to. And yeah, so those are the axles for the vehicle. Yep. Alright, so the next part of the modeling of this Sci-Fi Vehicle is going to be to make the wheels. Okay, so what we're going to do is if you haven't already, so let's assume that my 3D cursor, so this red and white thing is over here, let's say. And so when we spawn in an object, we get it over there, which isn't really going to help us when we're making our wheel. So what we want to do is delete that, and instead click on one of the axles. In this case, you want to press select and just click on one of the axles. Right click, press snap. Snap selection, or excuse me, snap cursor to select it, and that's going to get it right into the middle of the axle, and that's going to make it really easy for us to start making our wheels. Now, if we go up to the add button and press mesh and then cylinder, that's going to be really easy for us to do. And from here, we can press R and then X and then 90 to turn it 90 degrees. And now that is the orientation of our wheel. So now what you want to do is just try to move it over to approximately where we want our wheel, which is about here. Now, obviously, I don't think we want a wheel that is this big unless you want to. And in that case, go for it. But for now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be scaling this on the y-axis. So I'm going to press S and then Y, and that's going to scale it on the y-axis just a bit. And that's about the size we want. I know this doesn't really look like a wheel right now, but we're going to be doing some stuff that's going to make it look like a wheel. So we're going to just move this on the right, to the left rather, by pressing G and then Y, and we're just going to be moving this over here. And this is kind of wherever you think the middle of the wheel should be, as this is going to be the middle area of the wheel. So I think that should be pretty good for right now. I'm liking that. I'm liking the size. I think I might want to scale it. Actually, no, I like the size right now, so that's going to be good. So I think the next step here is that we're going to go into edit mode. So we're going to press tab, just like we always done. And this time we're going to do another mirror modifier, like we did last time. So we're going to do Control R. Right in the middle here, we're going to press escape, so it's right in the middle. And then after that, we're going to go to the face selector up here. We're going to press Alt and then select, so that's going to select all the faces. And we're going to press Shift and also select this back face and delete all of these. Okay, so now we have half a wheel. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go to add modifier, mirror modifier. We're going to choose the axis that works. In this case, it's going to be Z, at least from where I'm building the model on the Blender axis. But if that doesn't work, just try to choose one of these and one of them will eventually work. So once we have this, we can actually go back into edit mode, just like we did with the axles. And we can just select the face here, go to the x-axis, and start extruding outwards to create the wheels. Now, the best way to do this would just be to try to start to create a sort of wheel shape. So if you want to follow along with me, you can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be extruding on the y-axis, and then I'm going to just be scaling. So just press S, and you can kind of see how the wheel starts to sort of somewhat take shape. And I'm going to do that one more time, so I'm going to do E, and then S. Now it's looking pretty nice for a wheel right now, and it's starting to look like a wheel. You can kind of see the curves, and we're going to be smoothing this out anyway. So at the end of this, it is going to be looking like a proper wheel. So I'm going to leave that alone for now. And of course, if you want to, you can always shift and then D and move this on the x-axis just to get a feel for how. Excuse me. You can do shift G. You can move it on the x-axis just to get a feel for what this actual vehicle is going to look like with the wheels on. And if you don't like something, go ahead and change it. I mean, this is always an ever-changing process. You can always make improvements. So if you feel the need to do that, go ahead. But for now, I'm liking the size and all of the wheels, so I'm going to continue on with this. So we're going to go back into edit mode now. And we're going to go start making the inside of the wheel, which eventually we're going to actually separate from the actual like rubber of the wheel. And this is going to make it just easier for animation and such if we choose to rig this vehicle. So what we're going to be doing next is we're going to do E and then S just to make a tinier circle, very similar to what we did with our panels. And this is going to be the amount of like rubber we want like around the tire, you know? So that is looking good for me. So I'm going to go ahead and press G, and then on the y-axis move it in. So I think that is looking good. So now what I can do is I can start to work on the interior of the wheel. So how we're going to do this is I'm going to press E and then S. Very similar to what I've been doing again. This is no different here. And I'm just going to extrude backwards. And you can kind of see how this is going to start becoming the inside of our wheel. So you can really have a lot of creative liberty with what you want to do with this part. I generally just kept it simple and just tried to make a lot of cool like curves and stuff. So as you can see here, I'm just alt selecting and then shift selecting and then just extruding outwards and outwards and outwards. And that's really starting to look good, I think. And then I kind of had this like little design in the middle of the wheel, so I'm just gonna do E and then S to kind of replicate that. So if I go like if I go E and then S and go like actually E and then S and then right about in this area right here, that would probably actually I might want that a little smaller. So E and then S, and then so see, I mean, even I make mistakes when I'm trying to go through this. So obviously you can like change anything that you want on this. So yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna make this middle part right here. That's looking good. I might actually want to make that bigger now. Yeah. Yeah. So that's looking good. Okay. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select the face. I'm gonna extrude this outwards, and then I'm gonna taper it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna either there's actually two ways you can do this. If you want like a nice bevel, you can do Control B, and that's gonna bevel that a little bit. The only problem with the bevel is that sometimes it doesn't work all the way that it's supposed to. But for right now, for our purposes, this will work fine, as it gets it that nice like sci-fi kind of bevel thing. So we have that. So the next part of this would be to just ES, E and then S, and then just like extrude backward maybe. Yeah. And then actually we can kind of do a cool thing where we just kind of E and then S twice. We select these faces and extrude it outwards. And again, you have a lot of liberty with what you want to do with this part. You can pretty much do anything you want here. And now for this part that I'm doing anyway, I'm going to alt select these like edges, and I'm going to press F to fill it, and then that becomes the face. So that is looking pretty good so far, I think, based on my original one. And now if I actually go here and could even actually extend this one to be a little bit bigger. Same thing with this one. I can also make this one a little bit bigger and do that way. Yeah. So that's actually looking really good right now. And I'm liking that. So that's going to be the inside of our wheel currently. Now, the only other thing here would be to actually create the tread. And actually, first of all, I want to check if this thing actually looks good where it is right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Shift D. I'm going to move this to on the X-axis 3 times. And I'm just trying to get a feel for like the scale. Does this make sense? Does this actually look good or does it not? And I'm going to just do this for the right side too, because technically they're both the same since we're mirroring them right now. So yeah, that's looking really good actually so far. I'm really liking the scale and all of this thing, so it's going, I think it's going pretty well. And of course, if you see anything you want to change on here, go ahead and make a change on your model. But for now, I think I'm going to continue on. So we're just going to delete the extra wheels that I sort of made here, and we're just going to continue on this one wheel. Alright, now it's time to make the kind of the last part of this one wheel that's obviously going to be duplicated around our car here, and that is going to be to make the treads. Now, this isn't exactly a hard part, but it does require a lot of different steps, and if you don't do them properly, you are going to probably have issues here. So what I'd suggest you do is just follow step by step, take your time with this, and it should all work out. So the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to just be, and you can choose your 3D cursor anyway, so anywhere. So if you select your 3D cursor, and you can just select kind of anywhere you want our tread to kind of spawn in here, or at least the beginnings of our tread. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to mesh and then plane. So we're going to spawn in a plane here. And we're going to move this up here. We're going to go on the Z-axis here, and we're just going to scale this a lot on the Y and the X here. Okay. So we're just going to move that over here. Okay. So now, if we go into edit mode here, this is going to be one tread on our vehicle. Okay. So depending on the wheel size that you've made and depending on everything else, you are going to have to choose what kind of size tread you want, what type of tread you want, you know, how you want this thing to look. So that's really all going to be dependent on how you want to do this. So for me anyway, what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be scaling this so that it like roughly looks like about this size actually. Looks about right for the car that I'm going to be making. So what we're going to do here then, for this part, is I'm going to select this edge piece, and then we're just going to make the shape of the tread that you want, okay? So the shape of the tread that I want is kind of going, we're going to extrude this one out, and then we're just going to move it on the x-axis. So G, and then G, and then X. So we're just going to move that a little bit on the x-axis here. And then you're also going to want to, if you want your tread to like extend down to this part of the wheel right here, what you want to do then is we're going to want to extrude this one out just a little bit so then we can see how much it'll go ahead and do that. So that is looking good for at least my tread. If you guys want to do different shaped tread, you can go ahead. If you want to like research different types of treads and try to do that, you can go ahead and do that as well. But for this, in this case, I'm just going to stick with this kind of simple kind of arrow thing I just made. So what we're going to do next, and we're going to see how well this starts to look here, is we're going to go to add modifier for the plane. And what we're going to do is that we are going to go to shrink wrap, the shrink wrap modifier, okay? And so these settings should all be default. There shouldn't be need to be changing these, hopefully. So when we press the target tab, we're going to actually select our cylinder or our tire. And we can kind of see how the tread just wrapped around our tire. And that's exactly what we want, obviously, since treads do technically do that. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add another modifier that says solidify. So this is what is going to make our plane actually pop out of the tire. So if we go into here, we can see that our thickness is 0.1. Now obviously it looks like this is extending down into the wheel when we go positive, so that obviously isn't going to be helping us. So what we want to do is we want to slide the slider, or if you just want to type in a negative number, and this might be different on your end, so you just have to test this out and see how this is going to work on your end. But for me, it appears that the thickness needs to be negative in order for it to be sticking out of the tire, and from there you just choose how big of a tread you want. So I think right now that That is looking good for me. I might even do just a touch more. I feel like negative 0.05 would probably work for me. And that really seems to be working. I like that. I also might, if I go back in edit mode, I can always extend this out, but I don't think there's a need to right now. I think this is looking really, really good. So I think the next part here then would be to actually repeat this tread around this circle. So this is kind of the harder part here that even I sometimes get messed up on. So I definitely try to just go step by step with this, and you should be able to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to press the cylinder here. We're going to right click. We're going to go to snap, and we're going to do cursor to select it, just like we've been doing for the axle to make the tire and such. So that's what we're going to do there. So now it's right in the middle of our cylinder, okay? So the next part of this is we want to add an empty object, okay? So this is going to let us control the amount of turn that our treads have, and you'll see in a second. So if you're confused right now, don't worry. We will, yeah, it's going to work out. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to empty and plane axis. That is looking, so this is really what an empty is. It's just a little controller. I use this all the time for rigging and my car animations and that kind of stuff. So yeah. Anyway, so the empty is right there, okay? So the next part of this that we need to do is we need to take our tread here, and we want to right click, okay? And we want to set our origin to the 3D cursor, okay? So what this is doing is it's setting essentially the place of rotation for our tread to the middle of the circle, and this is going to allow us to duplicate this a bunch of times, okay? And so that's where the array modifier comes in now. So we can actually kind of close these. Don't apply them yet though, unless you're like fully happy with it. But for right now, I'm not going to be applying them. So I'm going to go to array, and we can kind of see how that kind of begins. Like you can choose the count and stuff. Now we will be doing this in a second, but for now we're going to turn off relative offset, and we're going to go to object offset. Okay, and we're going to turn that on. And then when we select our object, we want to select that empty we made earlier. So we can see how we can select the empty. Now, there is one more thing that you have to do, which I actually forgot, which is also for our tread, we want to press Control A. And that's going to apply all the transforms on it and all the properties on it. And that's going to make this process a little bit easier. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set our origin once again to 3D cursor. So we've done that. And then after that, we're going to go to the array modifier. We're going to turn off relative offset for now. We're going to just select our empty. And now we can see nothing happened, right? Or at least that's what we think. So now we can up the count a bit. And I know nothing's happening right now. So it really depends on how many treads you want here. So do you want like 30? Do you want 25? Do you want a different number? You know, that's really your choice. For right now, I'm going to test with 30. We're going to see how that looks. If it looks really weird, we're going to probably do less. So we'll see. So now what we want to do is we want to select our empty, and we want to do R and then Y axis. And when you look at that, we've made treads. Now, I think 30 was too much because there's not, oh, sorry. I think 30 was way too much, as now there's not really a gap between any of the treads. So, I mean, I guess it's like an armored thing. Yeah, no, that's not gonna work. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, that I'm gonna actually reduce this count a little bit. I'm probably gonna go like 20 maybe. That might work a little bit better. So let's check that out. We're gonna once again press our empty. We're gonna do R and then Y. Let's check that out. Oh yeah, that's much better. Okay, so and here you just want to try to get the spacing right between the second tread and then the last tread. So that's looking really good. I think I really like that. Now, another part of this would be to actually shade this thing smooth. And so what we can do, just to make this have a little bit of a smoother tire look, we can actually right click and press shade smooth. Of course, this looks really, really bad here, as we can see. So what we can do is we can go down to the green panel here, and we can press normals and then auto smooth. And that's going to just smooth those treads out just a bit more. And actually, we're going to be doing the same thing with the tire, except first, like I said earlier, we're going to be separating the outer portion of the tire from the inner portion of the tire. So what we're going to do first, actually, is we're going to go to the y-axis here. So then your wheel is just facing like this. We're going to go into basically toggle X-ray and also wireframe. we're going to go to face selection, and what we're going to do is we're going to select all the faces that we want to take out. In this case, it's all these faces, right? And so if you select any extra faces along the way, you can just press C, which is going to open your selector, and we're just going to press the middle mouse button and just deselect all of these. So once we've done that, we can actually just do P and then selection, and that's going to separate. And if we get out of edit mode here and we turn this thing back on, we can actually see that this separated the inner part of the tire with the outer part of the tire. So that's working really well. So we can actually shade this part a little bit separately, so then it works a little bit better. But for right now, I'm just going to keep it in the tire, and we're going to work with that. So now I want to shade the tire smooth. So how we do this is exactly like we did with the treads. We can press right click and shade smooth. That's looking okay. But we also, of course, want to do auto smooth, so we get like a truly smooth kind of tire shape here, and that is looking really, really good. Now, if we want to repeat these treads on the other side, there's a few ways we can do this. I think the easiest way is probably if you're really happy with the treads, which I am right now, I would suggest you just apply all of these modifiers. And that means then that this thing has just become one mesh, and you can move it around. There's no more weird moving around with it. And we can actually delete the empty now because it's not needed anymore. And now what we can do, there's a few ways we can do this. We could do a mirror modifier if you want to, but since we're not going to be making any like edits to this, what I would suggest is you just do Shift D, G, and then X, or sorry, not X. You want to move this on the Y direction, and we're going to want to mirror this. So right click, mirror Y global. Okay, and if you're building this on like a different axis, if your axis looks a little different, remember that you're gonna have to just experiment and see which axis is gonna work in order for this to work. So for that, then we are going to move this thing onto our tire, and that's looking really nice. That side's looking really nice. I'm really liking how this is turning out, I think. Now, the last part of the tread that I had on my original vehicle was this little like middle area here. Which I think I'm going to try to make at least. So we're gonna do a Control R, and we're just gonna move it so then it's right about there. And we're gonna do the exact same thing I did earlier with that P and then selection. So we're gonna Alt select this thing. We're gonna go P, selection. That gets that one out. And then after that, what we're gonna do is we're going to actually scale this part up a lot, so then it matches about the size of the treads here. And then after that, what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna go back into edit mode. We're going to select all the faces, and we're going to go E and then S. Alright, that's looking really nice. So now that kind of takes care of that middle tread part. And that right there, folks, is one of 6 wheels. Now, of course, since we've already made the other wheels, this is going to go really, really well. Now, for this part, you can kind of see how this doesn't look too great, right? When we take a look at it in cycles, right, we can see that it's going to look a little. Now the tire looks great. Okay, that's actually looking really, really good at this point. But for the interior currently, it's looking kind of weird where it looks like there's individual faces, right? And we can kind of see that here. It doesn't look as smooth as we'd like it to. So we can actually do the same smoothing thing that we did earlier, but we can make sure that these edges that we want to keep beveled will remain beveled. And how we do that is we go to our edge selection, and for our edge selection, we can actually go Alt and select all the faces that we want Blender to keep sharp, okay? And basically what that means is what faces do we want Blender to try to keep just like straight on. You know, we don't want that to be smooth. And that's really going to be all these like little edges we have here in our geometry that we made. So really this is just going to be kind of trial and error here, what works and what doesn't. But for me, I'm just going to take all these edges here that I've marked with, once again, just Shift and Alt select. We're going to right click and we're going to go to Mark Sharp. And that's going to make all these blue. And right now it doesn't look like anything happened, but that's because we haven't done Shade Smooth yet. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go to Shade Smooth. And I know this looks kind of weird right now, but if we go into our normals and do Auto Smooth, we can see how this thing just got everything smoothed out. Right? So now everything is looking much, much better. It's not looking as rough as it was earlier, and it really is looking better. Now, another thing that I would suggest for at least this middle part is that I would actually suggest you get the mirror modifier off. So I would press apply, because we're basically done with the mirror modifier for this part. And what I'd do is I would move this up. Actually, I wouldn't move it up. What I would do though is I would delete this middle face here. Actually, it might be easier to just show you. So I feel like, oh, my bad. Gotta select the actual tire. So if we select our tire here, we can kind of see how this thing is an exact mirror of that thing. And obviously that's not how tire rims work, right? We obviously have this inside part needs to connect to the axle, or at least it needs to look like it's connecting. So now what we want to do, since we turned off our mirror modifier, we know that the changes we make on this side are not going to affect the changes we made on this side. So the best course of action here is probably just to delete this entire part. So if we go to face selector, and we just select all of these faces here, and then we just press delete, pretty much. Delete faces. Now, of course, there may be a little bit of them remaining, so you just have to be careful not to delete anything else here, and just to make sure that you're deleting this side. And so we're just going to delete it. Oh, my bad. Just going to delete it once again. Still missed a few. That's okay. You just press C, select all of them, and then delete faces. And there you go. That's looking a lot better. So now what we can do is actually we can move all these parts back where we want it to go. And you can kind of see here how I accidentally deleted this part. So actually I'm going to correct that real quick. So here we can see that I accidentally deleted this face, right? So we're going to go to Alt, select this square here, and then you press fill. And that's it. That fixed that. So we're good there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this thing all the way over here where we want it to go. So this is looking really good. And I think this is about where I had it earlier. So what I want to do now is I want to kind of close this gap here that I have. So I'm going to close it by going E and then S and then just extruding this in just a bit. I do want there to be a little bit of a gap though, because that's going to add some nice shadow that we get when we render. So that is looking good for our tire, or at least the first tire anyway. And so what we can do now, there's a few different ways we can do this, because obviously we don't want to keep selecting this over and over, but if we want to make edits and we want to have different materials and stuff, we don't want to join these together. So what I would suggest you do is when we select this one, or first I would select every single part of it except for the tire rim, okay? So we want to select this tread, shift select, and shift select the tire, excuse me. And then after that, we're going to want to select the tire rim. And from there, we're going to press Control P and Object Keep Transform. So what this is going to do is it's going to make sure now that all the pieces move together when you select the rim. But if you select the individual pieces, they're still going to move together by themselves. So every time that you want to move this thing or make duplicates or such, you are going to want to select that. Now, the only issue though is that you still need to select all of these to make a duplicate. So we're going to want to select the tire rim, the treads, everything, and we're going to do Shift D, and we're just going to move this over here. And you want to make sure that this gets lined up right, because obviously then it's not going to look that great if it's not lined up. We're going to do that again. Alright, so that's looking really, really good, guys. So the next part of this then would be obviously to try to just duplicate these tires on the other side. Easiest way to do this is just to select all the tire parts that we have here, and just Shift D and just mirror them on the Y-axis. So we've moved it there, right? But obviously this is the wrong side, as we can clearly see. So what we want to do is we want to do, actually, wait. I appear to have actually forgotten to select the other pieces of the tire. So yeah, sometimes you might misselect something and you might forget something, and that's okay. Just go back and just do it again. So we do Shift D. We move this on the Y-axis. We go mirror. We also do it on the Y global. Okay, and what we're going to do next then, we're going to go to our X-axis here and just move this on the Y-axis. And that is looking really, really good, guys. This is looking very impressive so far. So now we've kind of got the base of our sci-fi vehicle here. So now it's actually just time to start to add really fun details. And I think the first detail that I'm really going to start to add next are these front lights here.